Guys, we need to talk. So if you've been following me for the last month or so, you might have noticed some memes and stuff popping up on my wall in relation to the Fender Tonemaster. There have been some good memes. In fact, if you hang on to the end of this video, or just skip ahead, I'll do a little show reel of some of the best memes. But there have been some good memes. So the man behind the memes really has been Alex Hamilton, although there's been a few other people chipping in as well, so we can't take all the credit. And I was going to respond to those memes with more memes, but I thought, you know what, I'll do a video and I'll explain why I love the Fender Tonemaster, and why I am right and you are wrong. So, before we get into this, Alex is a good friend of mine. It's all just bants. Nobody really cares. And I reckon Alex will agree with a lot of the points that I make in this video, but I don't think he's the target market for a Fender Tonemaster. Now, what I will say is Alex has the best tone out of anybody that I've played with, I reckon. He knows it, but also his neighbours know it. I'm not on about neighbours in the adjoining building, I'm on about the neighbouring town. Like, he plays loud. In fact, just this morning I've received a message from his long-suffering girlfriend Amy about making some unapologetic attenuation cookies, I think they're referred to, for the neighbours. Everybody knows that they live on the same street as Alex. So, yeah. Sunday afternoon when I'm recording this, so a bit of a Sunday sesh as well. Check this out. I've got the ultimate beer. It's a Marmite Camden Pale, which is a bit of a weird beer, isn't it? I assume, because I like Marmite, and I like beer, I'll probably like this. So, we'll see. That is weird. I don't feel sold on it. I don't love or hate it, to be honest. I don't know. It's a strange one, is that? If ever you've been to Jorvik Viking Centre in York, there's a really distinct smell inside it. And that's what that tastes like. Anyway, right, okay. Fender Tonemaster. Let's get into it. What is it? You'd have to bear with me because I've got notes beneath the camera, so you might see me looking down occasionally. Fender Tonemaster, what is it? So I would describe it as a sheep in wolf's clothing. So it is the latest in modelling technology from Fender, and it is a laptop pretending to be a deluxe reverb, essentially. Now, with it being modern, it's got a couple of nifty features that I quite like, and that's what sold me on the Tonemaster. So I'll run through that, I'll run through some of the features, and we can compare them. That's what I want to do with today's video, is compare the Tonemaster to the full fat deluxe reverb. So, just to state my position before we get into it, I love valve amps. I'm very fortunate to have a full fat deluxe reverb, and the Tonemaster obviously. I've got a 1973 Bandmaster sat behind me. I've got a couple of other modelling things as well, but I love valve amps. But I also love the Tonemaster. Like I say, it's got some good features. So, purpose of this video, compare the Tonemaster to the deluxe reverb. So it's like comparing full fat Coke, which is the deluxe reverb, to like a Coke Zero version of that amp. That's probably the best way to describe it. And I'm going to explain why I love the amp. So, let's get into it. So I'm going to use 4 4 criteria for comparing the amps. We're going to use sound, we're going to use features, we're going to use reliability, and we're going to use value. So with no restrictions, I would choose the valve amp every time. If there was no boundaries and no restrictions, the valve amp's better, but we don't live in an ideal world. And as a tool, the Tonemaster is quite useful for somebody in my position. So let's go into it on sound. The valve amp is untouchable if you can get it loud enough. Sweet spot on a deluxe reverb's like 5 or 6. My deluxe reverb, it was Alex's actually, it's modded, it is loud, and it sounds amazing when you get it loud. Now the Tonemaster, in comparison, I would say is 90% of the way there. I've done some recording which will come up at the end of the video, an A-B comparison, and tell me if you can notice the difference when we get there. But the Tonemaster is a very consistent sound. So valve amps are living, breathing things, and you know, the valves themselves contribute to the overall sound. If you set a deluxe reverb to 5 and it hasn't had a chance to warm up and you're outside on a cold gig, it's probably going to sound different to where the chances had the amp has had a chance to warm up and you're on an inside hot sweaty gig and you've got it on 5. It'll probably sound a little bit different. And sometimes you get amazing moments with valve amps as well, where you know, you get all the rich harmonic texture and you know, notes just bloom and sound amazing sometimes. But it's, I guess, a little bit more inconsistent than the Tonemaster. So something to consider with the sound as well is the sound in the room. I think it's quite obvious to tell which is the Tonemaster versus the valve amp, but we will be comparing mic'd up sounds, or DI'd in the case of the Tonemaster, sorry. So when you're getting down to sort of that line out or mic'd up sound, it is very close. I think there's a presence thing. There's just more of everything in the full fat deluxe reverb when you stood next to it and it's on. So sound wise, I'm going to say that the full fat deluxe reverb wins on sound, but the consistency of the Tonemaster, it can be a good thing. Well, it is a good thing for me, and I'll explain why later. So features. Now this is why I like the Tonemaster. First off, and most important for me, is it is lightweight. Compared to the full fat deluxe reverb, it's probably a third of the weight, I would say, compared to mine. For a gigging musician, that is incredibly useful. I did a gig a couple of months ago, and I had to carry, well, I had to lift my full fat deluxe reverb over a wall to somebody on the other side, and then I had to carry it across a field about a quarter of a mile to get to the stage, and set up in this tent, and then obviously had to do that all backwards again later on in the night. I would have absolutely killed for a Tonemaster in that scenario. My back was ruined the next day. I suffer with a bad back anyway, so you know, the lighter the gear, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And pissed up bridesmaids honestly cannot tell the difference between a full fat deluxe reverb and a Tonemaster. Also, they don't care. So, lightweight is one thing. It's got an attenuator on the Tonemaster, which the full fat one obviously doesn't. So that is loud all the time. Now, like I was saying, the sweet spot's probably around 5 or 6 on a deluxe reverb, I reckon, just when it starts to break up. You can set the Tonemaster at 5 or 6 and reduce the power into it and almost have it at talking volume. So if you're wanting to practice at home and not destroy your ears, it's incredibly useful. Not annoy your neighbours, etc, etc. I've gone to great lengths to protect my ears on gigs, and I use moulded earplugs for loud gigs. Tinnitus is a bastard. I don't need to be practicing and sounding as good as I can sound on the valve amp in here, in this room. I can't even get the valve amp as loud as it should be in this room. So, you know, I don't need to play loud. I'm happy with the Tonemaster, certainly for practices and rehearsals straight away is a very valid use case, I think, for everybody, not just me. You don't need to be carrying loud, heavy valve amps to rehearsals. You don't need to sound the absolute best you can sound in those scenarios. On a gig, it might be different. In the studio, it might be different. But does it matter if you're just practicing or rehearsing? No, it's up to you to decide. Ultimately, this is all taste and preference. So yeah, the attenuator, and it's also got a line out on the back of the Tonemaster, so you can plug a cable directly into it and go straight into your mixing desk, or USB interface in this case for the recording. Compared to the full fat deluxe reverb, you're going to have to set up a mic in front of it, or the sound man's going to have to set up a mic in front of it. You end up with more clutter on stage doing that. You know, it's easy to just plug something into the back. Now, when I was saying about consistency as well, sound men will absolutely love you if you've got a DI straight away. It makes it easier for them to manage the sound, and there's less that can go wrong, I think, as well in that scenario. And that consistency, if you're using the same sound man on every gig, will just save your settings, and the Tonemaster is always going to sound like it sounds. So, yeah. A couple more features on the Tonemaster compared to the full fat deluxe reverb, which, you know, that's what sells it for me. That's what I find useful. So I'm going to say the Tonemaster wins on features. Reliability. Now, this is a bit of a tough call because everybody keeps saying, well, what happens when the Tonemaster dies? You know, it's a PCB board, it's a digital amp. When it dies, it's dead and you won't be able to fix it. And I agree with that. It's a fairly new piece of kit, is the Tonemaster, so we don't really know how long it's going to last into the future and how hard you can work them. But what I will say is I've gigged valve amps for years and years and years, and I've had multiple valve amps die on gigs. And there can be a million different things that goes wrong with a valve amp. Your valves could go. You know, it could be a fuse that's gone. It could be, well, it could be anything. Dry solder joints, I've had that as well, which killed an amp on a gig. For big gigs in the past, when I've been absolutely shitting myself about having an amp fail on me, I've had to take 2 valve amps, twice the weight. It's just, if you don't look after a valve amp, then, yeah, they can die on you. Equally, the Tonemaster could, though. You know, I'm not saying that that's not going to happen with that, but there's certainly less that can go wrong. With a valve amp, you should be servicing it, you should be replacing the valves, you should look after it. I think the Tonemaster, well, unless you're like sitting in a puddle all night, every night, it's probably going to be fine. It'll probably even be fine if you do that anyway. But time will tell on the reliability. So I'm going to say that that's a draw for both of them on reliability. Now finally, value. I think this actually really should be cost. It doesn't look good for the Tonemaster here. They're not cheap. Best part of $1,000 for a Tonemaster, and I think it's probably about the best part of $1,000 for a deluxe reverb, but you're getting more, I suppose, in a deluxe reverb with the valves and stuff. So I don't know. It's a bit of a tough one. Is that I think that the Tonemaster is overpriced for what it is, especially compared to other modelling things that are out there. So yeah, it depends how much all those extra features add value for you personally. Like I say, for me, they do. Now I got my Tonemaster cheap from Alex. Cheap for what it is. If you could get one second hand, I think that they probably are worth it. But if I didn't have either amp and I was starting out and I had £1,000, I'd be going for a full fat deluxe reverb. Hand wired deluxe reverbs are a lot more. They're closer to £2,000, I think. But yeah, I'd be going for, you know, standard off the shelf deluxe reverb instead of the Tonemaster. So, gigging perspective and my specific use case. Now, this is probably going to make me sound like a bit of a dick. I had some good ideas for this video. I was going to make some jokes, but I ran them by my social media man, bass player Jamie, and he warned me it might make me look like a knobhead. So I've actually cut a lot of content out of this. But this is one thing that I've got to say, and it might make me look like a bit of a dick, but it is what it is. Now, if you gig once a month, then yeah, take the Super Reverb. Why wouldn't you? If you've got to leave the house 3-4 times a week with the amp, like I said earlier, taking heavy gear gets really boring really quick. And you know what? I don't need to sound as good as I can sound at rehearsal or whatever, you know. I'm happy to just take the Tonemaster out. Now, I've taken the Tonemaster out for some fairly big gigs recently, and nobody has, well, certainly nobody's complained about tone to me directly. In fact, I've only had praise from the guys running sound on the gigs and how much they prefer it over the full Fat Deluxe Reverb. So, yeah, the more and more that you have to carry and move gear about, I think the lighter that it is, the better. That's my general approach with it. Especially as the sound from the Tonemaster, I would say it's, like I said earlier, I think 90% of the way there. It's fairly close. Now, it doesn't matter if you've got your £1,000 deluxe reverb, your £4,000 custom shop, whatever, you've got £1,000 worth of pedals, you go to a gig, and the sound man will mic you up with a 20 quid Behringer. That is always a risk, and you might still sound shit. The mic'd out sound might be horrible. The consistency of the Tonemaster is really useful in that I know exactly what this sounds like out the front. So, yeah. For me, I place a lot of value on those extra features that come with the Tonemaster. And another thing to mention, I suppose, in regards to function gigs, silent stages are becoming more and more common everywhere, meaning if you wanted to go out and do a function gig and you took your deluxe reverb, you'd be kicked off the gig. You know, if it's a silent stage, no amps, you know, you're using in-ears or whatever. Yeah. Things like the Tonemaster are going to get more and more popular, I think, with people using in-ear monitoring. And, you know, the gig that I did last night had a sound limiter, and it's so frustrating. It depends where they place the mic and stuff, but you can end up playing so quiet just to not trip the sound meter over. But a lot of hotels are like that now, and clubs and stuff, I've noticed, have started getting more and more sound limiters in. So you spend the entire gig on edge, to be honest. Like last night, I was just staring at the sound limiter all night because you could see it flash. It's like a traffic light system. Green's alright, amber means you're getting loud, red means you're too loud. And they can cut the power to the stage. And last night it was flashing red all night, and it wasn't really that loud. So silent stages, yeah, becoming more and more common. So there are other options out there, as well as the Tonemaster, other modelling options. Pod Go. I've got a Pod Go, which is the same as a Helix. It's the same amps contained within it, the same pedals, etc, etc. It's just not as powerful. Now, it's a fantastic bit of kit, but for every good sound that is contained within the Pod Go or the Helix, there are 150 bad sounds, and you really need to know how to use it. It can be quite a confusing bit of kit. So if you go into the amp settings and stuff, you can adjust like how hot the valves are running, the sag on the amp. You could alter the different mics that we use to capture the sound. You can change the distance and where they sit in relation to the speaker cone. I can't be arsed doing any of that. A feature of the Tonemaster really is its simplicity, and I think Fender have taken some great steps moving forward with this modelling stuff. I don't want to go in and adjust all those parameters. I want to plug into something, and I'm kind of used to, you know, a bass control, a treble control, reverb, tremolo and volume, and that's it. And it's quite easy to get a decent sound out of the Tonemaster, I think, compared to like a Pod Go or a Helix or a Kemper or an XFX or whatever. They're all very similar in that respect. If you invest the time into them, then they can be very good. Something else that I've got, I have a quilter. Superblock US. So this is a Fender in a box, basically. You can see it on your pedal board. You can plug it into a cab, so I have a 1x12 cab that I plug this into. And this shares a lot of the same features that the Tonemaster has. So you can see up at the top it's got a line out for XLR, which is incredibly useful, as I was saying with the Tonemaster. And limited controls as well, so it doesn't suffer from the same issue that the sort of digital modelers like Helix and co suffer from. Now, great bit of kit. Now, arguably, you could say that this is better than the Tonemaster because it's lighter, picking it up with one hand. Obviously, you need to take a cab as well. What has annoyed me with the Quilter, I suppose, is it doesn't look like a proper amp on stage, and that bothers me. I'm vain enough that when I see pictures, I need to see an amp behind me, and that doesn't quite do it for me. But it does sound fantastic, and it's an excellent backup, and will take away some of the pressure from amps dying. You know, I can have that in my case and take it with me. It's a lot cheaper than a Tonemaster as well. I think that was about 250 quid maybe from Toman, so it wasn't, you know, it didn't break the bank compared to a Tonemaster at £1,000. It doesn't quite sound as good. I can definitely pick up, I guess, the more solid state sound from the Quilter, but it's not a million miles off, and once again, nobody in the audience will care. But I just like the look of a Fender amp on stage as well, so I've paid a bit of a premium for that. But for me, leaving the house all the time, the Tonemaster is going to be the main amp that goes out now. It depends on the gig. Like, I would be really annoyed if I went out to go see someone like JD Simo or Josh Smith or Kirk Fletcher or Matt Schofield, you know, all my heroes. If they were using a Tonemaster, I would be annoyed. But on a function gig or a soul band gig, it's impossible to tell, and it makes the job a lot easier for soundmen, for me, for everybody really. It just makes, you know, loading in and out of vehicles and stuff, it just makes the entire thing a lot easier. So, in conclusion, the Tonemaster is a tool for a job. It's an expensive tool for a job, but I love it. I think Fender have taken really good leaps forward in getting the right market for the modelling stuff. Like I say, it doesn't quite sound as good as a valve amp, but if you're in your bedroom at home using a valve amp on 1 or 2 on the volume control, you're probably not getting the best out of it. In fact, quite a bold claim, I reckon it's easier to make the Tonemaster sound better at those volumes than it would be to have a valve amp on 1 or 2. You know, it's not breathing, it's not awake, it's not alive at that volume, so they can sound quite cold and flat until you get them turned up. Whereas Tonemaster, like I say, consistent, you can have it at talking volume, it's great for recording at home, it's good for gigs, silent stages are becoming more popular. It's just, I think technology like that is probably going to take off, and like I say, Fender have taken some good steps forward. I'd be interested to see if other amp manufacturers will be following. So, all that said, and I appreciate I've been rambling for a while now, I've done a comparison. So, the track I've picked is a Ron Sayer track called I Ain't Leaving. I've covered this before. I chose this track though because it's quite stripped back in regards to like drums, bass and keys. It's quite an exposed guitar sound, so you should be able to hear differences between them. But I've played it note for note, and I'll cut in between clips and tell me which one is the Tonemaster, which one is the full fat deluxe reverb. When I recorded these videos, the Tonemaster was basically silent when I was recording the Tonemaster, and for the valve amp I had to have it at ear damaging volumes in here to get it to sound okay. So the recording process was frustrating with the valve amp and was straightforward with the deluxe reverb. I'm not saying if I went to go record an album or an EP or whatever, I would use the Tonemaster, I would actually use the valve amp. But you have to make other accommodations. Really, I needed to get the valve amp out of the room and crank it even louder, but it just wasn't practical. So anyway, compare the two videos. If you don't want to commit to guessing which one is the Tonemaster and which one is the valve amp, then just let me know. Does one sound significantly worse or better than the other? I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts. The recording setup was a direct line out of the Tonemaster straight into the USB interface, and the Deluxe Reverb had it's a knockoff Sennheiser E906, E609, I can't remember what it is, but it's a Superlux PRA628 Mark II, just rolls off the tongue. Just that in front of it. I probably could have picked up a lot more presence from the Deluxe Reverb if I set up some room mics and stuff. That's normally what I would do if I was going to record a video with that. But I wanted it to be as close to a live setup as possible. And if I was on a gig, I'd just dangle that over the front of it. So that's what you're getting. So I hope you enjoy it. And if you stick around and you can make it past the videos, then there will be a little showreel of memes for you at the end to enjoy. Let me know your thoughts, I'd be really interested in them. And thanks very much for listening. I'll see you again soon. Cheers.